will start the recording. And yeah, my name is Mo Mankling. I'm the policy director at the U.S. Federation of Worker Cooperatives. And yeah, I'm so excited to get into this conversation. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Deborah to talk about New Day.
Hello, and yeah, thank you for being here. So, New Day is a cooperatively owned grocery distribution service. It is a producer cooperative, so it is the producers who are the owners and the stakeholders. I'll give you a little bit of, actually, so these are our producers and stakeholders. There are two worker cooperatives here, Equal Exchange, which has a strong presence in the Seattle area. We are in the Seattle area. And then my own worker cooperative, which is Patty Pan Cooperative. And we are, well, we were mostly a business that did farmers market food concessions. So we worked at 15 or 16 different farmers markets. And we've definitely diversified our business model over the past 7 or 8 months. But many of these businesses also are businesses that we knew from working at farmers markets. And I think, farmers markets they're not officially cooperatives most of the time, but I think there are many cooperative elements, and that is one of the ways that New Day was able to come together so quickly this past spring. Really, from when we started working on it to when we launched, just about 2 months. Yes, so my background is I've owned and run small businesses since 1987, mostly sole proprietorships. But then about 8 years ago, I just was feeling tired and was looking at selling my business and realized that it would actually make more sense to open it up and make it a worker cooperative, because I really didn't want to leave, even though I was tired, and because I enjoyed what I did and, had a great group of people working with me. And so we did the worker co-op conversion. And actually, when we first did it, we didn't know that there was this network and infrastructure of cooperative support. So we really just did it on the fly. We worked with a lawyer who was interested in cooperatives, but didn't really know that much about them. And so he created some bylaws that we had to go back and change. But, in the process, I've just gotten really interested in cooperatives and have been, I've been working as a peer advisor, first with the Democracy at Work Network, and then also with the Co-op Clinic with USFWC, and also done some small business peer advising and mentorship through SCORE, which is affiliated with the Small Business Administration. So I found that I really enjoy just nurturing other businesses and working with them so they don't make a lot of the same mistakes that I made. And so the New Day Cooperative distribution has been an opportunity to do that as well, because there are a lot of businesses that have been at a really good point, where they could use another revenue stream and just figuring out how to fit it all together. So yeah, it's been exciting to have an opportunity to do this work in this other context as well. So New Day is a producer co-op. Like I said, it's owned by the producers, and we currently have about 30 producer businesses that are involved. We have a small buy-in. It's $200 if your gross sales are over $100,000 a year, or $100 if your gross sales are under $100,000. And, the buy-in has just been a way for the member businesses to have some skin in the game. It hasn't really given us a ton of capital, but we haven't really needed a ton of capital. And when New Day first started, it started pretty much under the wing of Patty Pan, my own worker co-op. And we very quickly, as soon as the farmers market shut down in March, we started doing home delivery of the products that we were making and packaging. And it was crazy busy the first 2 months, and then it just started ebbing. And we thought about carrying some other businesses' products, but we really didn't want to be buying and selling. We didn't want to be working with vendors. We wanted to be working with partners instead. And that naturally led to, thinking about setting this up as a cooperative. So we started working on that and pulled it together. And I think part of what has worked well about launching New Day is that first, we were doing it as a part of Patty Pan. So we were using Patty Pan's infrastructure. We didn't have to lease a space. We were working in a spare part of the Patty Pan facility that was available when we needed it. And we even diverted some of Patty Pan's payroll to getting New Day started, with the understanding that once New Day kind of gets on its feet, that we'll pay some of that back. But just that collaboration has really, I think, helped us get started more quickly, more effectively, more inexpensively than if we'd had to do it from scratch. And we very quickly outgrew the space in Patty Pan that we were using. And there's a bakery less than a mile from us that had a production facility that they were underusing because their business was mostly shut down and they had a lot of refrigeration. So we talked to them about leasing space from them 1 or 2 days a week when we were doing our packing and distribution. And we are working there now. We're quickly outgrowing it, which is a great problem to have. So the way it works is we have a central platform where we list everybody's products. We help people get set up initially. And then for the most part, vendors will manage their product listings and their prices and their quantities. It's a food hub platform. So it's designed to have multiple users, but then a central face, facing the customer. And we mark everything up 20%, which is much lower than what's standard in the grocery industry. But the object is for the producers to be able to keep more of the purchasing price than they would be able to keep if they were wholesaling, in a traditional wholesale arrangement. Customers place their orders until Thursday at noon. And then as soon as the order period closes, all of the producers get a pick ticket or a list of everything that's been ordered. And then they have up to a day and a half to deliver the product to New Day. And then we pack the orders and we distribute them. We have 4 drivers who are working with us. They all use their own cars. They actually prefer to use their own cars, which is great because it saves us more, more of the startup costs. But if they're getting paid for the use of their cars, then they're earning more money. So they're happy to do that. And yeah, so it's basically a really intensive 2.5 days when we're receiving the inventory and organizing it and packing the orders and then delivering. But I think part of how we're able to do such a low markup on the product that we're receiving is because we're not keeping any inventory. We're not paying for product that we keep on hand and we don't have money tied up in that. Yeah, and it's gone over well with customers. The first week we started with between 50 and 60 orders. We actually launched the first week in June, which feels like a million years ago now, but it was a pretty explosive time. And we launched our platform, we did some social media, it was all exciting. And then all of a sudden, just the demonstrations from death of George Floyd and Black Lives Matter, it just got very big very quickly, and it felt like totally the wrong time to be talking about ourselves. So we kind of pulled back and waited a couple of weeks for a better time. And we've been growing by about 20 weekly orders per month. So, we were doing 80 orders a week in August, about 100 orders a week in September, and now we're up to a little over 100 orders a week. And it feels like a pace that is both ambitious and sustainable. We do charge a delivery fee. We charge a $10 delivery fee, which is comparable to what, say, a lot of grocery stores that do home delivery are charging. It's actually a lot of comparable businesses that we've seen that buy local products and distribute them don't charge any delivery fee. But we find that by charging the delivery fee, first of all, we're able to pay our producers more because we're not taking that out of their costs. And we also get a larger average order because people are trying to order enough to make the delivery fee worth it. So it definitely weeds out some customers, but I think it makes the business overall just a lot more viable.
Cool. Thank you so much, Deborah. That was a really great overview. I wanted to kind of give you the space to just kind of like give, this is what New Day is, and let people know kind of like the biggest picture of it.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of questions for you.
Yeah, I just want to add one more thing,
Sure,
just to decide that we didn't realize until we were just about to launch that the name New Day Cooperative is a drug dealers co-op from season 3 of the show The Wire. And, and yeah, by the time we discovered it, it was too late to turn back. So we're just trying to embrace it.
I mean, people love that show, so
Love that show. Yeah.
So let that be a lesson to everyone. Do some research on it, and you can decide if you like it or not. To be honest, I kind of like it. So I have a bunch of questions that I'll ask, and then I'll invite people to either chat your question in the chat box, or you can use the raise your hand function, which should be available to you in your little kind of participant window, should be at the bottom. So you can raise your hand or indicate, or I'll also pause to see if people want to unmute themselves and ask a question. So let's see. So there's such a big group of producers that are part of the a part of the co-op. I'll share this again really quickly just so people can see it. I'm really curious. You talked a little bit about what the buy-in was like, but how did you choose the initial people? Like, has this grown? Did you start with this group of producers? And how did you choose the people that you wanted to partner with?
Yeah. Well, we started with, I think somewhere between 15 and 20. The original vision was that we were only going to have 5 or 6 businesses, but it would be businesses that could all offer a broad range of products so that somebody could do most of their grocery shopping through us. And as we started talking to other business owners, people would just recommend other businesses that they thought would be a good fit. We went with businesses that we thought were at a good place for this kind of thing, like not too big, not too small. And it's funny, like as I was looking at that previous screen, I thought, well, every one of these businesses, there's a different story for how they joined. Yeah. And one thing that we found almost as soon as we got started was that people were coming to us. So word got around in the producer community that we were doing this, and people wanted to join.
Did you find that people were already pretty familiar with the cooperative model and they kind of got it right away? Or did you feel like you had to was there any amount of like onboarding, kind of like this is how we do our decision making, that kind of stuff that needed to happen?
Well, we prepared a document that gave some background, and we asked people to read that before they join. And some of the member businesses, I think, are in this because they think it's awesome that it's a cooperative. And I think some of the member businesses just want another sales channel. And that's fine too. There's room for everyone.
Cool.
Or there's plenty of room anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you're thinking about starting with 5 and now you're at what, like 30?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And one thing that came up pretty early was that one of the farmers who we were talking to initially talked about having been part of a farmers co-op where, and it was a distribution co-op, and there were a lot of people bringing in the same product, so they were competing with each other. Mm-hmm. So we've tried to be very careful about avoiding that. So one of our criteria is we want to avoid businesses that are selling very similar products.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, and that gets really tricky, but it's interesting.
And since you've started, like as you said, you're starting the co-op at a very tumultuous time, and I think it's really important to say, like, in this moment, this is a response to, not just kind of like the not just the cultural moment, but also just this pandemic moment of, we talked a little bit about this right before we started, but your business looked a lot different, right? Like Patty Pan's different business beforehand. And do you think that this is a channel that you're going to want to continue to grow? Like, what do you see in the future of New Day Cooperative?
Yeah, I mean, we absolutely want to keep growing it. And we're not sure we want it to be really big, because there are just logistical things that we'd run into that won't really make sense if this were a much bigger business. But we definitely want it to be something that continues even after things go back to, whatever turns out to
Whatever
be
normal looks
normal
like.
in a year. But one thing we noticed, as I mentioned, we had started doing this as part of Patty Pan's home delivery. And that's kind of what it grew out of. But with Patty Pan's home delivery, we started right after things shut down, and people were, desperate for comfort food.
Mm.
And we found almost, and people wanted to support the producers. It was all about supporting the producers, which actually is not a narrative I'm entirely comfortable with, because I think there's even a certain victim element to it. Like these poor producers need help, so let's buy their stuff to help them. I very much want to turn that around to, here we are, our businesses have changed, and here's what we're doing to do things differently. But in any case, the support the producers narrative resonated a lot with people the first couple of weeks after things were shut down. And then a couple of weeks after that, people were tired of supporting other people, and they wanted things that were going to make them deal with the situation better. And I think the big lesson from that was that we're in a landscape that is changing all the time here. And so, we're starting this in this moment in time, and we have to be constantly tuned in to what's going on and what people are responding to and what people want.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Businesses really are going through all this transition, and life is going to look different for the foreseeable future, right? So you got to keep rolling with the punches. I'm curious if there were any big challenges along the way. I mean, it sounded like you pretty easily identified, we need to grow, and um, we need to um, get to kind of like the next level by like changing our facilities. Were there any other challenges that came up that, like, in hindsight, you're like, oh, I wish I had done this differently?
I think that we didn't really understand what the member businesses would need to make it work for them. So we brought in some very small businesses with niche products, specific niche products.
Okay.
We have somebody who makes Tef bars, energy bars from Tef, and which is Ethiopian grain, and they're wonderful. But it's a product with such a specific audience that it was hard for us to get enough business for that product to make it worth his while to deliver product to us every week. We have someone who makes a fermented dosa batter. So it's like an Indian pancake, and again, fantastic product. And it's difficult because there is just so much of that they're going to be selling, that we're going to be selling.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that was one challenge. And now when we bring in new producers, we're asking, do they offer enough that we're going to be able to sell enough to make it worth it for them to deliver to us once a week?
Gotcha.
Yeah. And then the other challenge we had was finding a farmer, because, we have a lot of food products, but um, we found that farmers had a really hard time committing to this because I think, their turnaround time and just the cycle between, knowing what the demand is and being able to meet the demand, it's a much longer timeline than, say, a business that, produces food with ingredients that we can get from a lot of different places. Farmers really have to plan on this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it actually took us until about beginning of September before we found a farmer who really could provide a lot of variety in produce and a lot of volume. And that's been pretty transformative. I mean, they're now our best-selling producer.
Oh, wow. And
Yeah.
who did that outreach? Was that primarily like you or people from Patty Pan, or was it kind of collective effort?
It was kind of a collective effort, and the board makes decisions about which producers to bring in. And we have those conversations, keeping in mind the kinds of things that where there are gaps.
Mhm.
And here, like, produce was an obvious gap. I think, and eggs were a gap for a long time. So we're all actively looking for other producers who can fill those holes.
While we're talking about logistics, I'll lift up this question from Jeff in the chat. And Jeff says, could you talk a little bit more about the logistics of the model? We have a food co-op in Denver, but it is primarily on site, and we have an interest in exploring the delivery model. How do you ensure just-in-time delivery versus holding inventory? What is your governance structure for the co-op? I know you talked a little bit about it, but maybe you can pass over it a little bit more.
Okay. Yeah. So we use it's a food hub style platform. It's called Local Food Marketplace. And we open the order period right around when the previous week's deliveries go out. The producers can log in and see what their sales are so far throughout the week, so they can have an idea of what to expect. And then we send out the pick tickets right after the order period closes, and people have a day and a half to get the product to us. We hold almost no inventory. There are two businesses that are about an hour away, and we keep some of their stuff for them. There's another business that just didn't want to deliver every week, and their stuff holds in the freezer for a long time, so we keep stuff for them. But honestly, I don't think it's a good thing for them. I think the fact that they don't have to deliver every week makes them less motivated about doing their own promotion.
Mm.
I think we would sell more of their product if they had to work harder to get it to us.
More engagement equals
Yeah. So yeah, we hold just about no inventory. I mean, I would say maybe 2 or 3% of the food that we sell every week comes from inventory that we've been holding on hand.
That's I think having that 1 week, like once a week kind of model, that's like helpful. I think it's good for people to have that. They know the schedule and they can depend on it. That's really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
One more question from Dante Swinton is that, do you know of other co-ops that have been emerging or forming during the pandemic that may not be food focused? I think we're talking still about like producer co-ops, but I have an answer to that, but I'm curious if you have heard of anything similar.
I've heard of a lot of people who have ideas, but not so much that I've actually launched. And I actually talked to somebody early on who was working on creating a driver's co-op, because first of all, the delivery apps are just awful for, you know, the users on both sides, the customers and the producers. And you know, a lot of Uber drivers were out of work, and you know, there's a niche there. There's a demand. Yeah.
Yeah, I have, I'll drop a link to the paper that we just recently put out from the US Federation of Worker Cooperatives about how worker co-ops have been doing during the pandemic, which talks a little bit um, how some co-ops have been dealing and how they've been developing through this. Actually, in the midst of this, we have been working on a freelancers cooperative that is helping to kind of take care of some of the back end administrative work for freelancers and create a space where they can have streamlined invoicing and healthcare and trying to build a network of particularly artist freelancers who are able to make the most of what they're doing and really be able to focus on their craft rather than focusing on kind of the back end of that. I will say this is a little bit different than co-op starting, but it is pretty related. Is that even during this year, the federations had a definite uptick in the number of co-ops that are a part of our network. So I think typically we have grown by 50 members per year, and I know we've already surpassed that for this year, which we really didn't expect, honestly, given this year knowing that everyone's sales have been down for no matter what your industry. I think that we thought perhaps that this year our membership might not grow too much, but it's actually proven to be what we've seen in history, is that during moments of tragedy and moments of upheaval, that people turn to cooperatives as a way to support each other and keep people stable during hard times. So let me see some of the, I have a couple more questions here. So can you, I would love if you talked a little bit about the board. And I'm trying to remember if you said the Patty Pan board or if it's the actual board of New Day that helps to actually like make some of the decisions, like what that looks like, how often you meet together.
Yeah. The New Day board makes the decisions, and we meet. We don't have a fixed schedule. We were meeting maybe every 2 weeks when we were first starting up, and now it's probably every 3 or 4 weeks. We usually just email and try to find a time when there's something that we need to talk about. And we set it up initially so anybody who was interested in being on the board would be on the board. You know, of course, the danger there is you get too many people, but it's a time commitment, and you know, it takes some energy and some focus. So the board right now is myself, and then my coworker from Patty Pan, who is now the general manager of New Day, and then someone else who had been a Patty Pan member in the past. And we had actually, she and I had both taken some coursework in a program on cooperative management. And so we had talked a lot about different kinds of co-ops. So I thought it would be great to ask her to join because I knew she had a great perspective on this. So she was interested. There's someone from Equal Exchange, and then there are people from 2 other member businesses. So we have not had a free and fair election yet, but we will be doing that when, you know, just when we have the bandwidth for it. I don't think there are people who want to be on the board and want to have more of a voice. and want to, devote more time and energy into it, who aren't being given an opportunity. I think this is just the people who were engaged enough to show up for meetings initially. Yeah, I think one tricky thing about the board is that there are 6 of us and 3 of us are affiliated with Patty Pan.
Mm.
So we did, let's see, we added a provision in the bylaws that said that if the board is discussing something that relates to your own co-op, you have a voice, but you don't have a vote.
Gotcha. That's interesting. And for you said that there are 2 other member businesses, but are those ones that aren't, they're not co-ops, right? Because it's you and Equal Exchange that's
Right.
cooperative.
Yeah.
How's that been with people that weren't already kind of like in a co-op environment prior to this?
Oh, it's been fine. It's been perfectly fine. And I think one thing that's really helped is that so many of the businesses are farmers market businesses. And I think farmers markets for the most part are not set up as co-ops, but they really do function as co-ops. They need everybody's participation to make it work and everybody's engagement to make it work. And we all have to sometimes take it for the team and be there on rainy days when there's nothing going on. So there's this mindset, even if these businesses aren't necessarily incorporated as co-ops.
Mhm. Cool, thanks. I have a follow-up question here. And actually, I'll put all these questions together from 2 people. So number 1, what's your legal structure? And how was funding garnered to get New Day off the ground? And is it self-sustaining as of now?
The legal structure is a mutual benefit corporation.
Can you explain
Which,
that a little bit more?
yeah. I mean, it's a form of co-op. It's a form of a co-op in Washington State. It's one of the possible business structures for a co-op here. And I assume many of you have had this experience too. It's hard to find a lawyer who can do co-ops. And when we found someone, we found him through the Food Hub, which is also a producer co-op. And one of the first questions he asked was, is the purpose of the co-op to make money? Like for itself. And I said, no, I mean, we very much want to not lose money. But the purpose is to make money for the member businesses rather than for the entity itself. And so he said mutual benefit corporation would be the best structure for that. And we let him take care of it. We started this business with about $6,000 in capital. There was some payroll that Patty Pan subsidized that is on a spreadsheet, and Patty Pan will get paid back for it at some point. I put in a few $1,000s just because it was what I wanted to be working on. It just, it was interesting and exciting to me. And then my coworker, who is the general manager, she put in a little bit of money. And then we probably got about $2,000 from, no, maybe it's a little more than that, from member businesses and with their buy-in. So, I mean, we really did start this business with about $6,000 or $7,000. And so it's come from a bunch of different places with an indefinite timeline for it being paid back, but it will be paid back. We are now looking around for our own space, and we will need more financing for that. And we're talking to an impact investor who has expressed an interest in financing us. We've asked her for about $25,000. So the next step is to get her a business plan. And then we're also talking about doing a Kickstarter for just another $5,000 or so, an amount that will be achievable.
Okay. That's those are, like we're getting really into the weeds with numbers, but I think that's really helpful
Oh,
for
yeah.
people to understand like how to replicate it. When we started having this conversation about having this co-op hour, Deborah, you and I talked a little bit about, what could this look like to replicate in different places around the country? Because, in this moment, we're all looking, there's so many different kinds of businesses. And to the question asked earlier, even things outside of food, right? So, what are your thoughts about replicating this model, both within the same kind of, like particular around food products, or even outside of that? Do you think that what you have, you mentioned a document that kind of like lays out some of the information. Do you think that this is an easily replicable model? And like where would someone even start if they wanted to?
Yeah, I think that for it to be started on a shoestring, the way we started it on a shoestring, you would need another business that's fostering it. And I think someone mentioned wanting to do something like this through a brick and mortar food co-op. And I think that could work really well. I'm not sure I'm not sure exactly what we did can be replicated, because so much of it came out of the very specific time and place, but I think the elements of it that can be replicated, coming together with a central platform. And I think, having somebody who's willing to, who's interested and engaged enough to do a lot of the foundational work. Yeah, because I think it's kind of a myth that in co-ops everybody does the same amount of work. I think it really does take some people being willing to spearhead it. But at the same time, if you have something that's exciting and engaging, people are going to get on board with it.
Yeah, I usually see it as a common agreement on what work needs to be done and who's going to do it, rather than an equal distribution of the actual work, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't always look the same because it seems like you already have a person serving as general manager, which means like obviously there's a different kind of structure in terms of who's doing the work, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a really great point. Actually, is you have to create structures and allow people to inform the process, but not necessarily equally spread it.
Yeah, and clear expectations.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I think where it runs into trouble is when people who are less engaged have louder voices.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so try to avoid that.
Yeah. So we have about 10 minutes left. So if you have any final questions, I would encourage people to add them in the chat window. I am I'm curious how this is felt in your personal journey, Deborah. Just because you said that you put down some amount of money personally because you're really excited about it. Like how going from like owner to co-owner, cooperator to now kicking off this new day business with collaborators. How does that feel? Do you feel like excited about the future of like cooperativism? I'm looking for how we can encourage people in this moment that feels really stretching for all of us.
Yeah. I mean, for me personally, in the past 8 months or so, really, this is what's gotten me through. Just because it's been interesting, and it's been something new to do. Also on a personal level, my father died at the end of April, and he very much encouraged me to follow my heart. even when something didn't make sense. I mean, to the point where, I probably should have been encouraged to be more practical. But in a way, it felt like, doing this thing that, I had no idea if it was going to work. It was just like, this is what I feel like I want to do, set it in motion. And, so in a way, it was also a way to just be with him, because it's also a really hard time to have, the death of a close relative. It was on the other side of the country. So I wasn't able to, see any family or anything. So maybe that's more information than you were asking for. But,
It's a really sweet story. I mean, that's real, right? We're all going through a lot right now, and sometimes having something to focus on that is able to be uplifting is really important.
Yeah, that's a lot of where it came from. And as far as collaborating with other people, it has just been so exciting to collaborate and see this thing become something, bigger than any of us individually could have done.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So I think I see one last question in here. That's resurfacing a little bit, but I'll ask it a different way. Is how do producers get buy-in? Do they sell through you and you get the 20%? And I'll tweak that just to say is, what is the we talked a little bit about the vetting process, but like how long does it usually take for a producer to get kind of in the flow of things?
Yeah, I mean, it varies considerably. Some producers, are ready to start up almost right away, and they get their stuff in there, and we start selling. Some producers, it can take weeks or months. But as far as the payment and the pricing structure, we collect the money through the local food marketplace platform, and then we pay out everybody's producer share the following week. So it's a 1-week turnaround.
Oh wow, that's great.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's producer centric.
Yeah.
Yeah, and people need their money. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Deborah. This has been a really great deep dive. We don't always have the spaces to get this kind of like into some of the details of this. And I think this is a really interesting model that's really necessary in these times. So I really appreciate you taking the time to talk through it.
Thank you for having. Yeah.
Let me pop this on the screen real quick just for folks to see. I will send out a follow-up email that has a link to New Day Cooperative Distribution. It's rethinkinggroceries.coop, I believe. And so you'll get a follow-up with that information for the recording. If you have any other questions, you can feel free to send them in and maybe we can try to get them answered. I'll also say that this is a program of the U.S. Federation of Worker Cooperatives. We work with really amazing businesses like Patty Pan, like Equal Exchange, and it's really, I will say, it's really gratifying and really important for us to be able to engage with small local businesses right now. The people that I think to your point, it's not just we just want to support businesses, but we really want to see a different kind of economy, an economy that's, really emphasizing businesses that are centering producers, centering workers, and creating spaces that are equitable for all different kinds of people. So we do this in a lot of different ways. Some of this looks like these co-op hour programmings. We do a lot of advocacy work. It's co-op month. So we're doing a lot of work to lift up some of our members in here. We also do that through health equity work. So we have a whole program that offers dental, vision, health insurance. I think Patty Pan, I think you might be actually enrolled. No?
Dental.
Yeah. Thank you for being a part of our dental program.
Thank you for doing the dental program.
So what we do is we collectivize the people power that we have throughout the worker co-op network in order to offer reasonable rates and networks for different services. We're adding in disability, accident insurance. We're also opening up HRAs, FSAs, um, and more. So if you are interested in any of those things, you should absolutely join as a member. Go to usworker.coop. You'll find all sorts of resources, like the co-op clinic that Deborah is a part of, that just lends some, technical expertise. Where we have a lot of resources around COVID-19, and yeah, so we are here to support cooperatively run, cooperatively owned businesses. And we're really excited and happy to have spent this time with you. Thank you so much, Deborah. Thank you, Eric from the Interpreters Co-op of Madison, for being an amazing interpreter for this hour. We really appreciate your work here. And thank you all for taking the time.
And thank you for making this happen.
Yeah. Cool.